All right, we're back after a bit of a break, this time with headphones and a bit of a delay in my head. But yeah, I guess reasons for me not doing a video as I've been wrestling with how to do these videos and being able to talk in real time to changes I'm making to the project, just to see if that would add any value. I'm not sure it will. I think it's causing me to hesitate more than it is actually gaining something useful, but we're going to do it for this session and maybe a few others just to mix it up, and just because of the fatigue that I was getting from working on that last track and not feeling like I was making progress, I thought maybe a good way of switching things up would be to sort of do one day on, one day off, and the one day on would be working on an actual production, and the next day I would focus on a specific element or technique. So the last video I did, I think I spent ages trying to get my head around Sigmund D16, which is a multi-tap delay / chorus, and the thing that came from that was, that's a really unintuitive and quite difficult plugin to wrestle with. But having done that, I thought I would create a project with almost all of the delays that I've purchased over the years, and that would be useful because I could start with some sort of source material, like a percussion loop or a kick, whatever it is that we want to use with the delay, and we can quickly, well, in today's session, I think what I'll do is I'll quickly move through each of these, which I've set up in this project as a send, and we can just look at the commonalities between the plugins and focus on the specific features which are common to all delays, which obviously are the delay timing, the wet dry, which applies to pretty much most effects, the feedback, high pass, low pass filters, and just see how they're different in the different effects, and also in the fundamental differences in the types of delays, from your ping pong delays, your multi-tap delays, and other variations. So yeah, the other thing I thought that I would try and get into the habit of doing is, when I put the video on YouTube, is provide a Dropbox link to the project. And I think the way that would work is that we'll just put a full stop on the end of each of these sessions, and whatever the project looks like, I'll save in its own folder, and I'll put a link to it on the YouTube video to the Dropbox account, and that might serve me down the track in terms of being able to review the session, especially if there was something that was actually useful, and then just to open up the project as it looked at the end of that session to see what was actually done. And maybe it'd also be useful just to sort of put some comments in there as to what we actually covered. So yeah, all right. In this session we've set up, I've got a kick loop or just a drum loop, and I've got the microphone set up. Actually, one more thing that I will just quickly talk to is, like I mentioned at the beginning, we did have I have had quite a lot of problems in relation to setting up Studio One and trying to understand how it handles latency compensation. So I might just quickly show you the settings that I'm using for that, and I'll actually also make a reference to this other tool that I've used that allows me to actually mix the output from the DAW and the microphone and use it in Camtasia, which I'm using to record it, and that's this Odious Link Pro session, which is just on the screen so I can refer back to it. It's just so I know it was working in this configuration. But in Studio One, the thing that was interesting was the the low latency monitoring, which basically takes care of, well, makes sure that you don't have an unusable delay in your headphones when you're monitoring. And essentially how that needs to work in Studio One is that we need to ideally have a reasonably low device block size or latency setting on the sound card. In this case, it's my Complete Audio 6. And we've got a process buffer of 256 samples, which is pretty low. I mean, I could go out to 1024, and I think that's, this computer is fine enough to handle a setting that low. And then in the processing setting, we have settings that relate to dropout protection, and it sort of has settings, or it gives you information as it relates to the low latency mode. So effectively, what's this called? I can't remember what they refer to this as in Studio One, but the latency setting that I am getting is 24.2 milliseconds, which is still noticeable, but it's fine enough to work with in this situation. And effectively, how that works is that the plugins that I use on the microphone chain have to be of a low latency. So in this case, I've created basically a channel strip with a gate, a Synopsys plugin, which has 0 latency, a compressor, and then an EQ. In fact, I haven't even got anything on the EQ. I'm not sure if it's useful maybe to have a low pass filter on this. That's that, yeah. But essentially what the low latency monitoring does is that it routes the audio from my mic into the output of my master strip without it actually traveling through any of the mastering chain. And what that allows, so effectively you've got, I guess you can think of it as 2 lanes, like the song minus the microphone has its own set of latency settings, and I can have that fairly conservative. If I'm using lots of plugins, I can have quite a high latency setting in that context, and the microphone settings will have a separate latency setting, and they bypass all of the high latency plugins that create that delay that would make having these headphones and speaking into the microphone basically a horrific experience. So that was quite useful. So that's enough talking. I think what we're going to do is we're going to just I've got these delay plugins set up, and I've got a percussion loop which we'll just play. And what I'm going to do is I'll just send to each of these and quickly go through all the settings. So it's Sigmund here. Obviously we want to have this set up where it's wet, and channels. Okay. The other thing we can look at here is we can change this send to be pre-fader. So now it's actually not pleasant, so let's just go to control. Essentially what that is doing is it's sending it to the effects channel regardless of any volume setting that's on the original or on the source track. So if we bring the volume up here, and we'll bring the feedback back, so we should only get one tap here. Get a bit of high pass filtering in there. And then we'll bring in some of the original dry track. Okay, this drum loop's probably a bit busy for wanting to demonstrate a delay, so maybe I'll just bring in I don't know, just something a bit straighter. I don't know, well, what's a piano? Okay, so okay, so what have we got here? Just keep it pretty basic. Both channels with the same tempo. Decent amount of feedback. We could turn the filter off. Okay. We're modulating the delay time with the LFO here. That's modulation source 1, the LFO here. We can add some distortion to the delays. Maybe we'll get rid of the modulation. We can actually modulate the filter as well, which is an interesting one. Maybe put a bandpass filter on it. And a slow LFO sync to say, I don't know, 1 bar. That's interesting. The other good thing about this thing is this plugin is that we can easily copy settings. So I can copy, control click up here, copy it, and then paste it here. So now if we look at the settings on channel 2, we notice that they're identical, okay? So we can create pan this tap to the left, and we could pan this one to the right. And we'll just, I don't know, screw around with the settings here. Maybe we'll, I don't know, we could maybe add some tremolo to the right delay using Anyway, that's an interesting effect. The other thing I think we should go through is maybe just the presets. I think as a habit, what I'll do is actually save whatever presets I've got. It's probably just easier to save those within Studio One. And I don't know, it's probably also good to have a naming convention. I don't know what that would be. We'll save this preset and we'll create a folder and we'll call it tutorials. No, not even that. I mean, these are hardly tutorials. These are, it's just more of a, I don't know, in the mix session, if you like. Hang on. Alright, so we've got a folder here, and we'll save a preset. We'll put it in that folder, and we'll just call this whatever. We'll just name it today's date. It's 1/8/18. Bit of fun. Alright, and so that's Sigmund. I covered this a lot in the last session. It's I have to say it's not the most enjoyable thing to use. In fact, it's full on, and especially when you begin to think about all the different, how you can use all these channels in all of these different routing configurations. I think the best thing I can say about it is that there are quite a lot of presets, and those presets, once you know how to use it, you can probably sculpt into something that would work in your track. So just looking at that, if we look at bar align purposes, we'll have a look at, I don't know, we can just look at delay. You can just toggle. These lock features up here are probably also useful in terms of experimenting with maybe changes that you've made, and you just want to so you've got a nice delay happening somewhere, and you can lock that and see how it sounds in a greater context with some experiments other people have placed into the presets. So here, just turn the delay off. Okay. This is something else that's confusing me as well, in terms of the mixer is giving me nothing. So obviously we have an effect. What we're hearing is an affected signal, yet we're not seeing anything. And now it's there. So I don't know if that's a bug, but anyway, I think we've had enough of Sigmund, so I'm just going to put you to one side for now. And we're going to have a look at Satin. And we're going into this pretty cold. Now Satin is an interesting effect because it's a tape machine more than it is a delay, but it's actually three effects in one, from what I understand. It's a tape machine, which is good for changing, I guess, the tone of various instruments and drums, or even good on a mastering chain. But it is also a tape delay, so it's got a delay mode. So I think we'll pick a preset. I don't know, it's just an initial preset. Does it have an initial preset? How does this? Oh, so it's got a mode here. So we go into this delay, and so now we're in a delay mode. And we've got a speed here, which has got some sort of retro measurement, IPS. I'm sure that means something. Regardless, I can give it a tempo sync. Oh geez, well, this could be interesting. So the mix is wet, which is good because we're using it as a send effect. And this, the repro heads, I'm assuming that might have something to do with the number of taps. So if we're using, okay. So we've got 2 taps. They have a level, which is self-explanatory, a balance, which is obviously panning, modulation amount, which would be interesting for sort of creating, I guess, a chorus or a flanging type effect, and a modulation rate. So that's interesting as well. So that's the tempo sync is not, and then we've got these different modes. We've got ping pong left and right. How does this work? Shit, I might need a manual. Okay. So the modulation amount. Okay, so if we just get rid of the modulation amounts, add the level in there. Feedback. There's obviously a limiter there. Okay. Shit. Alright, we'll see what maybe some of these presets, they might rhythm delay. Okay, now that's a good preset. Alright, do I have a manual for this? User guide. Okay, that's cool. Alright, so I might cheat a little bit here, see what. Delay mode. What am I seeing here? So. Tape delay mode, 2 heads. Does that mean 2 taps maybe? The sliding switch at the top left. Okay. Tape speeds are 7.5, 15 and 30. Okay. So when we've got tempo sync on, the IPS affects the color or the tone, I guess, of the delays. Interesting. So in tempo sync, delay times are relative to the song tempo. The repro and recording heads are set in musical notes relative to tape speed. So typical multi-mono each. Okay. Sums the stereo signal to mono first, then feeds a sum to either left or right to balance these sliders. So the distance sliders are these things. So these sliders at the distance. Okay. Okay, cool. I think I understand that. So, might just get rid of the modulation amount here. I might just get a single sound, like a single snare or something. Files. And this is going to. So now what I've got here is a mono sample, but I'm using a stereo signal, and I've found that depending on the effect, if the effect isn't set up to handle a stereo signal or a mono signal, you can have a stereo effect, but if it's got a mono input, you're going to get a mono output. So what I've found is the best thing to do is just to bounce this track so that it becomes a stereo sample. Okay. That's interesting. So what have we got here? Okay, so I've got one tap. It's set to tempo sync, and this it's actually hard to set. I can't really. So, okay, so that's what we got here. So if I go to the manual again, distance, it's saying clicking anywhere on the track of the slider, then dragging left to right will snap to 16th note values. Tempo, clicking anywhere on the track of the slider, then dragging left to right. Okay. So that's 1/16th note. Just have this as multi-mono. That's better. This is beautiful. So alright, so we use the high cut to create so it's got a lock feature here as well, so this is good. So effectively we've got a stereo signal coming in straight down the middle, and our delays are going to be left. If I make it across, interesting, I lose the feedback. Alright, so we've got a okay. Okay, so the cross routing seems to impact the feedback. Alright, anyway, let's have a look. So if we go ping pong. take the modulation amounts and rates out. That's better. So, okay. So this could be a good effect just for just to add a bit of steeriness. So it's basically a 2-tap delay. We'll cut the feedback out. Multi-mono, basic. 1 tap to the left, 1 tap to the right. Adjust the levels. This is super simple to understand. And then you can adjust the tone, the delays. You could add a bit of feedback. Okay, that's interesting. And so if we go for 4 heads, does that mean we get 4 taps? It kind of does, I guess. I'll just take all the modulation out of it because I mean that. So we can make the first tap all the way to the left, the second one all the way to the right, the third one a bit to the left again, not quite as much, and the other one. So we've sort of got 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and 1 o'clock here in terms of the panning. The levels, I'll just make them all the same. It's pretty good. Add a bit of feedback. Oh, I love this. This is so cool. Let's play around with the modulation. I mean, and you can lock these settings. How good is that? If I can lock these, I'll just lock everything because this is getting a really good groove going. Just play around with some interesting. Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I understand it. I could play around with this forever, but I think I've got a new favorite delay. This is really cool. let's go to contestant number 3, which is Echoes from Nomad Factory. And this one, what is that? It's not what I want, is it? That's some kind of bug. Okay, remove that. We're going to add echoes in there, which is Nomad Factory echoes. Add it as a send. Okay. So echoes. Alright, so we want to set this up so that it is wet. There's no lock feature there. Looks pretty simple. It's, you know, you can set it up as a ping pong delay. You've got a feed. This is effectively the feedback, and these obviously are modeling different. I don't know if it's like a vintage pedals. So there's obviously a bit of signal colouring, distortion, or I guess. So what's something that's easy to understand is just that an eighth beat. So there's no feedback there. We get a left and a right tap, starting with the right. So if I move this to the left, I get a left tap followed by the right. So this effectively controls the panning of the ping pong effect. So this is pretty cool. This is very simple. The echo level, don't know what that does. The drive is obviously just driving it. Wow and flutter obviously probably impacts the pitch modulation of the taps. And then a bit of feedback. Just play around with the sound. That's pretty cool. This maybe. Okay. Okay, so we'll take the feedback out and we'll just listen to the tone of the delays, I think, just to see what it feels like. We'll go for this one. What's this? This one's a bass, so it looks like there's a bit of an EQ here. We can increase the treble, drop the treble of the taps. Okay. Boost the bass, drop the bass. Okay, pretty simple. That's pretty cool. So this would be good as just a basic stereo effect, maybe on a synth or, you know, on keys. And obviously there's a sync effect here as well, so bit of a tape effect that you get from moving this around. It's interesting though, so we can 10 milliseconds. And it looks like there's some stereo control up the top here. So basically I've got a mono effect here and a stereo effect here, and we can obviously control that. So that's good to know about as well. The The oil can, what does that do? Just changes the tone a bit. Alright, pretty basic, but pretty cool. I think I'll end up using that. That's probably good on vocals, especially with the drive knob. Okay, what else have we got here? In fact, I've forgotten. So the next one is a 3D delay. This is from Nomad Factory as well. What have we got? 3D delay. This one's really nice and simple as well. So effectively we've got 3 taps that can be panned, and you can have it, and you can control the what is this? It's like a single note, half note. So, and then you can control it. So at the moment we've only got the right delay active. I'll make this a completely wet, because it's being used as a send. Feedback. So you've got one tap, it's on the right, it's a dotted note. So if I make this, this is 16th note. Okay, so there you go. So we'll make the second delay, first delay to the right. I'll make that a 16th. This is dotted. So this is an 8th note, is it? Yep, so this is an 8th note. So, okay, that's pretty cool. We'll bring in the middle one. We'll make it a quarter note. That's pretty good. So you get a bit of a drum roll happening there. And then we can control the level. So delay, the first delay that's going to play is going to be the right one. So we'll make that the maximum value. The middle one will play last, so we'll make that length. Or we could flip it around and make this. Okay, so it's pretty simple. We can add some feedback in there. This is cool. This is cool as well. Simple. Alright, 3D model delay. Simple, cool. So for anytime you just want a simple one, anything less than 3 taps, that sounds cool and is easy, that's my go-to, I reckon. Okay, so we'll remove that. Now another, what else have we got here? So we've got liquid delay. This is like some, this looks pretty shitty really, but what is it? This is a Nomad Factory one that I got in a bundle. So it's a 2-tap delay that has tempo synced. It's got feedback section. We'll turn that off to start with. It can be modulated. So the left is an 8th note, the right is a quarter note. We can make the right. Okay. got a filter. We've got an LFO here that can modulate the filters, so we can play around with that. Let's make that. So we've got sync. We'll make the rate 1 bar, make the depth 100%. And see what happens. Turn the feedback on. Ah, here we go. Add some resonance. Ooh. Okay, the square wave on the filter is pretty cool. I might save this as a preset. So let's go here. Store preset. What do we save the presets as? Here, I saved it as in the mix with a date. So we'll do that as well. Create a store preset and call it in the mix. And we'll give it today's date, 2018 0417. Oh, school LFO. So we're going to cut everything above. There's a setting down here as well. So you have drive, filters, delays. We can make it delay filters drive. I like it. It's actually pretty cool. Alright, I might save this as well. So I'll save this store preset. Gives it a bit of edginess. Do the 16. That sounds good. I think that's. Alright, that's cool. Alright, well that's the liquid delays. Going drive, which means it obviously goes through the inlet, then it goes through the filter, then it gets delayed. So okay, anyway, that's interesting. So what do we have next? We have the oil can echo, which is another really simple one. I don't think I'm going to spend much time here. We'll go oil can. How does this work? This is wet. It's got a sustain setting here, so 95, 89. So it's like 3 decades of colour. Whoa, don't know what this is doing. Okay. So there's no feedback control, it has some type of fixed. Slap, delay and echo. This is an interesting one. I think if you just want very basic delays, I think this is more of a colouring effect. So I don't mind the echo sound. That sounds pretty cool. So this sustain is the feedback. Okay. So there's a delay. Interesting. Okay. I'm not thinking I'm going to play with that much longer. And then we've got the Papen delay. So how does this work? This looks like it's a 2-tap delay. Oh shit, this looks complicated. So we've got input, output. It's got a dual stereo. I'll just go stereo delay. So you've got input goes into delay A. It's got a reverse thing here. Shit. This one might need its own video. The mix is 100%, that's okay. Feedback. Stereo sync equal the length of the right. We'll have it at 1. Triplet, 1/8 triplet. Turn the feedback down. High pass. Everything below 5k. Everything above, I don't know, 200. Alright, feedback. What's this? Filter type. Negative feed. Shit, what does that mean? Shit, it's got distortion and filters here. Huh. Huh. That's pretty cool. We'll just center it in the middle. Huh. This is actually pretty cool. So what's this reverse thing? Full reverse, what does that mean? Oh, that's interesting. Alright, this one probably does need its own video. It's got shitloads of settings here. Trigger, what is that? So you can trigger. It's got an EQ. Global modulation, so you got modulation envelope. Okay, so you could use it as a chorus. So how are the settings here? Quick browse. Mono digital delay. This doesn't make sense. So it's going through delay A. It says stereo mix. I've got no feedback, but I'm getting multiple delays. Delay 1A feed. What does that mean? Oh, it's the global feedback. Ah. Put a sync so I can make this. This is good. It's a stereo delay, so it's going in to A, so you can have dual stereo if you wanted to. Yeah, so there's lots of everything above 1 point, everything below, everything above 160. So All right, this is pretty interesting, and this has been an hour. So we are going to wrap this up. I'm going to save this project. So we'll save it. YouTube source files. Create a new folder. So that's done. I'll provide a link to that in the YouTube. All right. Good night, Australia.